I was a software engineer with big dreams. For 6 years, I poured my heart and soul into developing a revolutionary medical app that could save lives. My business partner, Jack, who had been my best friend for 15 years, was by my side through it all. We built our startup from nothing, celebrated every milestone together, until that night when I needed to use his computer. What I found on his screen changed everything. Before I get into my story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had your trust broken by someone close to you. I have been passionate about coding since I was a kid. My parents bought me my first computer when I was 10 years old, and I would spend hours learning programming languages instead of playing video games like other kids. By the time I was 14, I had already created several simple applications and knew that technology would be my lifelong pursuit. College was where everything really took shape for me. That was where I met Jack during freshman orientation at MIT. We clicked immediately, two ambitious young men with similar interests and complementary skills. While I was more of the technical genius, Jack had this incredible business sense and charisma that drew people in. He could walk into a room and leave with a dozen new contacts and opportunities. We quickly became inseparable, staying up late talking about how we would change the world through technology. Those conversations in our dorm room were electric, filled with possibilities and shared ambitions. We both agreed that someday we would build something meaningful together. The idea for our startup came to me during my final year when my grandfather was misdiagnosed with a treatable condition that later became much more serious. I realized that artificial intelligence could potentially analyze symptoms and medical data more accurately than overworked doctors. An AI-powered diagnostic tool could save countless lives by catching critical conditions early. When I shared my vision with Jack, he immediately saw the potential. His eyes lit up and he started mapping out a business plan on the spot. While I understood the technical complexities, Jack knew exactly how to position it in the market. He talked about potential partners, revenue models, and growth strategies that I would never have considered. After graduation, we officially started our company in my parents' garage. I converted the space into a makeshift office with 2 desks, a whiteboard, and enough computer equipment to run a small tech company. We named our startup MediMind, reflecting the artificial intelligence at its core. Those early days were tough, but exhilarating. We lived on ramen noodles and coffee, working 16-hour days to bring our vision to life. Jack would often crash on my couch rather than drive home after late-night strategy sessions. My girlfriend Sarah would bring us food sometimes, forcing us to take breaks when we had been coding and planning for too long without rest. The first prototype took me 8 months of relentless work to develop. When I finally had a working version that could accurately diagnose common conditions based on symptom input, we celebrated with a bottle of cheap champagne. It was far from perfect, but it was proof that our concept could work. Jack recorded a video of me demonstrating the software, his genuine excitement evident in his enthusiastic narration. As Jack focused on the business aspects, I dedicated myself entirely to perfecting the technology. He secured our first small investment from an angel investor who believed in our vision. $25,000 seemed like a fortune to us then. We used it to upgrade our equipment and bring on our first part-time developer to help me with the coding workload. Our user base slowly grew as we offered the beta version to a select group of medical students and residents. The feedback was invaluable, helping me refine the algorithms and improve the accuracy. Each positive review fueled our determination, validating what we had sacrificed so much to build. After 18 months of development, we finally moved out of my garage and into a real office space. It was nothing fancy, just a small suite in an aging building, but it felt like a milestone. We had a proper sign on the door with our company logo that Jack had professionally designed. We hired 2 more developers and a marketing specialist. We were becoming a real company. Jack excelled at networking and promotion. He attended medical conferences, pitched our concept to healthcare professionals, and built relationships with potential investors. Meanwhile, I led our growing development team, improving our algorithm and expanding the range of conditions our software could identify. Our partnership worked because we trusted each other completely and respected our different domains of expertise. When I needed more development resources, Jack made it happen. When he needed the product improved, to meet a specific market need I delivered. We were a perfect team, or so I believed. The medical community began to take notice of our work. A respected journal published a study showing that our software had an 87% accuracy rate in identifying early warning signs of heart disease, outperforming first-year residents. Suddenly, investors were calling us rather than the other way around. Jack and I became inseparable outside of work as well. He met Sarah through me and later introduced me to his wife, Maria. We had dinner at each other's homes regularly. When their son Michael was born, they asked me to be his godfather. I accepted with tears in my eyes, honored by this extension of our friendship into family. We took weekend trips together, our partners becoming friends as well. Jack was not just my business partner, but my closest friend. As our company grew, so did the stakes. We were preparing for a major presentation to a group of venture capitalists who were interested in investing $8 million. This would be transformative for MetaMind, allowing us to complete development and begin large-scale implementation in hospitals across the country. We worked tirelessly on the presentation, refining every slide, practicing our pitch until we could recite it in our sleep. The night before the big presentation, Jack toasted me with expensive scotch he had brought to the office. He said something I still remember clearly. "Words cannot express how lucky I am to be on this journey with you, Curtis. Everything we dreamed about is coming true. We are going to help millions of people together." I had no idea that everything was about to change. The first signs of trouble were so subtle that I dismissed them as nothing more than the growing pains of a successful startup. Jack started taking more phone calls in private, stepping outside the office or speaking in hushed tones. When I asked about these conversations, he would wave them off as sensitive investor discussions that he did not want overheard by our staff. Then came the meetings I was not invited to attend. Jack explained that these were purely business-focused sessions that would bore me and that I should focus on what I did best, advancing our technology. It made sense on the surface. Our roles had always been divided this way, but something felt different. In the past, Jack had always kept me informed about every important business development. Documents began to mysteriously disappear from our shared drive, only to reappear days later with subtle changes I could not quite place. When I mentioned this to Jack, he suggested I was misremembering the original content, or that perhaps one of our new team members had made updates. The explanation was plausible, but doubt had begun to creep in. The real warning came at a tech industry holiday party. An attorney I knew casually who specialized in intellectual property law had had a few drinks and mentioned seeing Jack meeting with his firm. That would not have been unusual, except for one detail. He mentioned Jack was there alone, no company representation. When I asked what they discussed, he immediately became uncomfortable and changed the subject. Around this time, Jack started making expensive purchases. He arrived at work one day in a brand new Tesla, explaining that he had gotten an incredible deal through a friend. The following week, I noticed an extremely high-end watch on his wrist that had to cost at least $15,000. When I jokingly asked if he had robbed a bank, he laughed it off, saying he had been saving for years for these indulgences. Growing increasingly uneasy, I finally confronted Jack directly. I asked if there was anything going on that I should know about, anything that might affect our partnership or the company. His response chilled me. "Curtis, you are being paranoid. This is exactly why I handle the business side. Your mind works in algorithms and code, not people and deals. Trust me to do my job, and I will trust you to do yours." The gaslighting worked temporarily. I convinced myself that my concerns were unfounded, a product of anxiety about our growing success and responsibilities. I redoubled my focus on our technology, working to implement new features that would make our upcoming investor demo even more impressive. However, more troubling signs emerged. I discovered I had been excluded from important email threads with our potential investors. When I brought this up to our office manager, she seemed surprised, saying she thought I had been copied on everything as Jack had instructed. Then came the contract changes. Our lawyer sent over updated company documents for signature, and I noticed subtle modifications that slightly reduced my equity share. When questioned, Jack said it was standard procedure recommended by our investors to create a proper stock option pool for future employees. It seemed reasonable, but the fact that he had not discussed it with me first felt wrong. Despite my growing concerns, I wanted to believe in my friend and partner. We had come too far together, achieved too much. The thought that Jack might be working against me seemed impossible, a betrayal too painful to contemplate. So I pushed my suspicions aside and focused on what was most important, making our technology the best it could be. One afternoon, I overheard Jack on the phone and the conference room door slightly ajar. I would never have stopped to listen if I had not heard my name. The words that followed stunned me. Curtis is brilliant with the technical stuff, sure, but the business vision has always been mine. He is essentially our chief developer, not a true co-founder. Jack paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "We will need to adjust his expectations going forward," he continued. "I have a plan for that." After that conversation, I began to notice a change in how team members interacted with me. There were knowing glances, conversations that stopped when I entered a room. People seemed to be walking on eggshells around me, as if they possessed information I did not. The atmosphere in our once cohesive office had become strained and uncomfortable. Sarah noticed the change in my demeanor at home. After weeks of my distraction and insomnia, she finally demanded to know what was wrong. When I explained my suspicions, she was not surprised. She revealed that at our last company barbecue, Jack had made some concerning comments to her about my role in the company changing soon. She had dismissed it at the time, but now it seemed significant. "Curtis, you need to protect yourself," she urged. "I have never fully trusted Jack. He is too smooth, too calculating. You need to find out exactly what is going on before it is too late." I decided she was right, but I still needed proof. I could not believe that my friend of 15 years, my business partner with whom I had built everything from nothing, would betray me. I needed to be certain before taking any action. I had no idea how devastating that certainty would be. The revelation came on a Tuesday night. Everyone had left the office except for me. I was working late finalizing some code improvements for our investor demonstration that Friday. I needed a specific financial projection that Jack had prepared but had not shared with me. Since we had always had an open-door policy with each other, I went to his office to look for it. Jack and I had shared passwords since the beginning of our partnership. It was a symbol of our complete trust in each other. I had never abused this trust, only accessing his computer when necessary for work purposes. That night, I logged into his computer to find the financial document I needed for my presentation notes. What I found instead changed my life forever. There was a folder on his desktop labeled Confidential IP, which seemed odd since we had always kept all intellectual property documentation in our secure shared drive. Curious, I opened it. Inside were patent applications for our core technology, the very algorithms I had spent years developing. But these applications listed only one inventor, Jack Patterson. My name was nowhere to be found. I felt physically ill, my hands shaking, as I opened document after document. The betrayal went far deeper. I found emails to our potential investors describing me as just a technical consultant, one who could be replaced if necessary. Jack had positioned himself as the visionary founder who had conceived and guided the development of our revolutionary AI diagnostic system. My heart pounding. I discovered a company restructuring plan dated for execution the following month. It reduced my role to that of a regular employee with minimal equity and no decision-making power. There was a separation agreement already drafted, providing me with a modest payout in exchange for relinquishing all claims to the company I had co-founded. The evidence of Jack's duplicity was overwhelming. Financial documents showed money being diverted to a separate holding company solely owned by Jack. Meeting notes revealed he had been secretly meeting with my engineering team, presumably to ensure they could continue development without me. Most devastating of all was a presentation prepared for the upcoming investor meeting. It contained a section titled Company History that completely rewrote our story. According to this fiction, Jack had conceived the AI diagnostic concept while in medical school, later bringing me on to help implement his vision. Every breakthrough, every innovation that had come from my mind and hard work had been attributed to him. Text messages between Jack and one of our potential board members discussed strategies for phasing me out. After we secure this round of funding, the problem needs to be dealt with, Jack had written. Curtis has served his purpose, but he is not the right person to take this company to the next level. I sat in the darkened office staring at the computer screen, feeling as though my entire world had collapsed. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated that I could barely process it. Years of friendship, countless shared moments, all apparently meaningless to the man I had trusted most in the world. When the full impact hit me, I broke down. Alone in our office, surrounded by the company we had built together, I sobbed like a child. Everything I had worked for, my life's purpose, was being stolen from me by the person I had trusted most completely. I must have sat there for hours, cycling through disbelief, rage, and devastation. By morning, I had composed myself enough to confront Jack when he arrived. I waited in his office, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. When he walked in and saw me at his desk, his expression shifted just slightly before he masked it with concern. "Curtis, what are you doing here so early? Is everything okay?" I told him I knew everything. I had seen the patent applications, the emails, the restructuring plans. I asked him how he could do this to me, to our friendship. His response was chilling in its calculated coldness. His concerned facade dropped away, replaced by a businesslike detachment I had never seen before. "This is nothing personal, Curtis. It is just business. You are a brilliant engineer. But this company needs more than that to reach its potential. I have the connections, the business acumen, and now the legal standing to take MetaMind where it needs to go." When I reminded him of our years of friendship, of being his son's godfather, of all we had built together, he simply shrugged. "Those were good times, but we are not in college anymore. This is the real world. The simple fact is that legally, everything is already in my name. There is nothing you can do about it." He called security to escort me from the building. As two men I did not recognize approached, Jack informed me that my personal items would be sent to my home address and that I should not return to the office. Just like that, I was being removed from the company I had co-founded, the technology I had created. As I was walked out, staff members watched in shocked silence. Some looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Others seemed confused, clearly unaware of what was happening. My team of developers stood together, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and helpless sympathy. I realized then that Jack had been planning this for months, systematically isolating me while securing his position. The final blow came as I reached the exit. Jack called out, "Oh, and Curtis, I would appreciate it if you would return your company laptop. It contains proprietary information that belongs to MetaMind. To MetaMind, not to me." Despite having written every line of our core code, I now had no legal claim to any of it. I handed over the laptop without a word and walked out into the bright morning sunlight, feeling completely empty inside. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. 6 years of work, my greatest professional achievement, stolen by my closest friend. The personal betrayal cut even deeper than the professional one. Sarah was my rock during this time. She took time off work to be with me, ensuring I ate and helping me process what had happened. But even she grew concerned. As days stretched into weeks with me showing little improvement, I lost weight, unable to stomach more than a few bites at mealtimes. Sleep became nearly impossible, my mind constantly replaying memories, looking for signs I had missed. What made the situation even more unbearable was the knowledge that in just 2 weeks, Jack would be pitching to the venture capitalists we had been courting. He would secure millions in funding using my technology, my vision, while I had nothing. The thought of him succeeding with his deception was almost too much to bear. One evening, as I sat staring blankly at the television, my phone pinged with a message from Alexis, a developer who had been on my team. "Felt you should know this, happening Friday," the message read, accompanied by a forwarded email about the final investor presentation. "Curtis, this is not right. What he is doing to you is wrong." That message was the first thing to penetrate my fog of depression. Someone else recognized the injustice. Someone else cared. It was a small thing, but it provided a glimmer of hope when I desperately needed it. The following morning, I received another message This one from Marcus, our former IT manager who had left the company a month before my ousting. Curtis, we need to talk. I know what Jack did, and I think you have options. We met at a coffee shop across town. Marcus looked nervously over his shoulder before speaking, clearly afraid of repercussions. I left because I could not be part of what Jack was planning, he explained. He asked me to modify access permissions to delete backups of your early work. I refused and quit instead. The information hit me like a thunderbolt. Jack had been systematically erasing evidence of my contributions, creating a false narrative where he was the inventor and visionary. The depth of his planning was staggering. But Marcus provided something even more valuable than confirmation. You kept everything on your personal drives too, right? All your original development work. That is your proof, Curtis. That is what they cannot take away from you. I had hit rock bottom, but suddenly I could see a way forward. I had meticulously documented my work from the very beginning, keeping detailed development journals, storing code on my personal drives, and emailing myself updates as additional backup. I had the proof of my contributions that Jack had tried to erase. That night I faced a pivotal moment. I could surrender, start over, and try to rebuild my career while Jack profited from my work, or I could fight back. The decision crystallized with perfect clarity. I would not allow him to take what was rightfully mine. My creation was meant to help people, not to make Jack wealthy through deception and betrayal. The next morning, I called Daniel Reeves, a technology attorney I had met at a conference years earlier. I explained my situation, and he immediately understood the significance. Curtis, what you are describing is textbook intellectual property theft, he said. If you have the documentation you claim to have, we have a case. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. It was a small spark of hope, of determination. Jack had underestimated me. He thought I would break, that I would slink away in defeat. He was wrong. I pulled out my external hard drives and cloud backups, finding years of documented work. Every iteration of the algorithm, every breakthrough, all meticulously time-stamped and saved. Emails between Jack and me from the early days clearly showed my role as the inventor and his as the business partner. I had the evidence I needed. As I reviewed these materials, I discovered something else. Jack had made a critical mistake. In his eagerness to claim credit for the technical aspects of our product, he had described complex algorithms and machine learning processes in investor documents. But Jack had no technical background. He could not explain how these systems worked, could not defend his supposed creation under scrutiny. With renewed purpose, I began gathering everything Daniel would need to build our case. The betrayal still hurt deeply, but now I had a channel for my pain. I would fight not just for myself, but for every creator who had ever been exploited by someone they trusted. Jack would not get away with this. With Daniel Reeves' guidance, I began a systematic approach to reclaiming what was mine. We started by meticulously gathering every piece of evidence that proved I was the true inventor of MetaMind's technology. I dug through years of backup drives, recovered cloud accounts Jack thought I had forgotten about, and assembled a comprehensive timeline of the development process. My most valuable assets were my original development notebooks. I had filled dozens of them with handwritten notes, diagrams, and code snippets, dating back to when the idea was just forming in my mind. These notebooks, with their dated entries and coffee stains, told the true story of our company's creation far more convincingly than Jack's revisionist history. Next, we reached out to former team members who had witnessed my role firsthand. Despite fears about their own careers, several agreed to provide sworn statements confirming I was the architect of the technology. Their testimony painted a clear picture that contradicted Jack's claims completely. The breakthrough came when Marcus introduced me to Philip Nash, our former chief technical officer who had mysteriously resigned 6 months earlier. What Philip revealed stunned even me. Jack had directly asked him to backdate technical documents and to support a false narrative about the company's founding. When Philip refused, he was forced out with a severance package that included an aggressive non-disclosure agreement. Jack is banking on everyone being too afraid to speak up, Philip told me. But I have been waiting for someone to challenge him. I still have the original emails where he asked me to lie. Armed with growing evidence, Daniel helped me secure specialized legal representation. We brought in Julian Mercer, one of the nation's top intellectual property attorneys who had successfully handled several high-profile technology theft cases. After reviewing our evidence, Julian was confident. "This is not a borderline case, Curtis," he assured me. "What happened to you was blatant theft and fraud." Our legal strategy had multiple components. First, we documented the entire development history, with irrefutable proof creating a timeline that clearly showed my role as the inventor and primary developer. Second, we identified specific instances where Jack had altered company documents after they had been signed, constituting fraud. Finally, we prepared to demonstrate that Jack lacked the technical knowledge to have created what he claimed was his invention. As we built our case, I made a remarkable discovery that strengthened our position tremendously. In presentations to investors, Jack had claimed detailed knowledge of neural network architecture that formed the core of our diagnostic system. However, in emails between us, he had repeatedly asked me to explain these same concepts in simpler terms, admitting he did not understand the technical aspects. These communications directly contradicted his public claims of technical authorship. With all our evidence in place, we moved forward with the most aggressive strategy possible, filing for emergency injunctions to halt Jack's investor meetings before he could secure funding based on fraudulent claims. The timing was crucial. We needed to act before millions of dollars changed hands under false pretenses. The day of Jack's big pitch to venture capitalists, he was served legal papers just as he prepared to begin his presentation. I was not present, but Julian described the scene to me later. The look on Jack's face was one of complete shock, he said. "He clearly never expected you to fight back with such force." The injunction immediately froze all company assets and prohibited any investment deals from proceeding until ownership of the intellectual property could be legally determined. Potential investors, suddenly aware of the dispute, quickly backed away from the deal. No one wanted to invest millions in a company with contested ownership of its core technology. News of the lawsuit spread quickly through the tech community. A reporter from a prominent technology publication contacted me for an interview, and with my attorney's approval, I shared my story. The resulting article, titled "Founder Betrayal: The Dark Side of Startup Culture," brought significant attention to my case and to the broader issue of intellectual property theft in startups. The publicity had an unexpected benefit. 3 former employees of other companies Jack had worked with reached out independently, describing similar patterns of manipulation and credit stealing. Though their experiences could not be directly included in my case, they provided valuable context about Jack's history of exploitative behavior. As our legal proceedings advanced, Jack attempted to counter with claims that I had been merely an employee implementing his vision. However, his arguments fell apart during depositions when he was asked to explain technical aspects of the product. His inability to describe even basic principles of the algorithms he claimed to have invented was damning. When pressed on specific technical questions, he became flustered, eventually admitting he would need to consult with his technical team to answer. The turning point came when the judge reviewed our evidence of document tampering. Jack had altered founding agreements, backdated technical specifications, and manipulated email records in an attempt to support his false narrative. These actions crossed the line from intellectual property disputes into outright fraud, significantly strengthening our position. After 6 grueling months of legal battles, the court ruled definitively in my favor. The judge granted me full ownership of the patents and ordered a complete accounting of all company assets. The timing was crucial. We needed to act before millions of dollars changed hands under false pretenses. The day of Jack's big pitch to venture capitalists, he was served legal papers just as he prepared to begin his presentation. I was not present, but Julian described the scene to me later. The look on Jack's face was one of complete shock, he said. "He clearly never expected you to fight back with such force." Winning the legal battle was just the beginning of my journey. When I regained control of MetaMind, I found it in financial ruin. The legal dispute had scared away all potential investors, and what little money remained in company accounts had been drained by Jack's legal fees and excessive personal expenditures. I stood in our nearly empty office now, mine again, but hollow compared to what it once was. The ruling was scathing in its assessment of Jack's actions, describing them as a calculated scheme to deprive the true inventor of his intellectual property. Jack faced more than just the loss of the company. His professional reputation was destroyed. The court findings were public record, and no one in the technology sector would trust him again. The last I heard, he had moved to another state, attempting to reinvent himself in a different industry. But then I remembered why I had created the technology in the first place: to help people to improve medical diagnoses to save lives. This was bigger than me, bigger than my pain. My grandfather had died because of a misdiagnosis, and I had promised myself that I would help prevent similar tragedies. That purpose remained unchanged, regardless of what Jack had done. The rebuilding process was arduous. First, I needed to address the financial situation. I took out a second mortgage on my home and put in every dollar I had saved. Sarah supported this decision, completely believing in me and the importance of what I was trying to accomplish. Her faith gave me strength when mine wavered. Next came the challenge of finding new investors. Jack's betrayal had made me wary of bringing in outside partners, but I knew the company needed capital to survive. This time I approached the process differently. I was transparent about our troubled history and implemented governance structures that would prevent any similar situations in the future. Many potential investors passed when they learned about the company's tumultuous past, but some were intrigued by the technology itself and impressed by my perseverance. Among them was Teresa Gonzalez, a former physician turned venture capitalist who specialized in medical technology. After thoroughly vetting both me and the technology, she agreed to lead a modest funding round. Teresa's investment came with something even more valuable than money: her guidance and network. Unlike Jack, whose business ethics had proven non-existent, Teresa operated with complete transparency and integrity. She helped me establish proper corporate governance, including a board structure that protected both the company's mission and my role as founder. Most of our talented team had found other jobs during the uncertainty, unwilling to wait for a resolution that might never come. The company I fought so hard to reclaim was barely a shell of its former self. For several days, I contemplated closing MetaMind entirely and starting fresh with a new venture. The company was so entwined with painful memories that continuing seemed almost masochistic. But then I remembered why I had created the technology in the first place: to help people to improve medical diagnoses to save lives. This was bigger than me, bigger than my pain. My grandfather had died because of a misdiagnosis, and I had promised myself that I would help prevent similar tragedies. That purpose remained unchanged, regardless of what Jack had done. The rebuilding process was arduous. First, I needed to address the financial situation. A turning point came when David Chen, a brilliant developer I had briefly worked with years earlier, reached out after reading about my case. "I need a new challenge, and I believe in what you are trying to build," he said during our first meeting. "We can do this the right way with integrity." David became more than just my first new hire. He became a true partner, though, very different from Jack. Where Jack had been charismatic and bold, David was thoughtful and methodical. He brought technical skills that complemented mine, and more importantly, an ethical approach to business that aligned perfectly with my renewed vision for MediMind. As months passed, we gradually added to our team, carefully selecting individuals who shared our values. I implemented structural safeguards within the company, legal protections for intellectual property, transparent communication protocols, and clear documentation of all contributions. These measures were not just about protecting myself. They represented a commitment to creating an ethical company culture where everyone received proper credit for their work. 18 months after regaining control of MetaMind, we achieved a major milestone: our diagnostic system was implemented in its first hospital. Most of our talented team had found other jobs during the uncertainty, unwilling to wait for a resolution that might never come. The company I fought so hard to reclaim was barely a shell of its former self. For several days, I contemplated closing MetaMind entirely and starting fresh with a new venture. The company was so entwined with painful memories that continuing seemed almost masochistic. Rebuilding the team proved equally challenging. Many former employees were hesitant to return to a company with such a troubled history. I could not blame them. The betrayal had shaken my own faith in professional relationships. For months, I worked virtually alone, maintaining the existing technology while trying to advance it further. The emotional toll of the experience weighed heavily on me. Trust, once so natural to me, now felt like a luxury I could not afford. Perhaps most importantly, I learned the difference between trust and naivety. Jack had exploited my unconditional trust, but that did not mean I needed to close myself off entirely from meaningful partnerships. Instead, I now understood that trust should be extended, gradually earned through consistent actions rather than promises or shared history. Today, MediMind is helping patients in 27 hospitals across the country. Rebuilding the team proved equally challenging. Many former employees were hesitant to return to a company with such a troubled history. I could not blame them. The betrayal had shaken my own faith in professional relationships. For months, I worked virtually alone, maintaining the existing technology while trying to advance it further. The emotional toll of the experience weighed heavily on me. Trust, once so natural to me, now felt like a luxury I could not afford. Our technology continues to improve, and our team has grown to 34 dedicated professionals who share our mission of improving healthcare through ethical innovation. We are not the billion-dollar unicorn that Jack had envisioned, but we are making a real difference, saving lives every day. I still think about Jack, sometimes wondering if he ever regrets what he did, if the wealth he sought was worth the cost to his integrity and our friendship. The greatest victory was not winning in court, it was finding myself again, stronger and wiser than before. I replaced bitterness with determination, vengeance with purpose. The company I rebuilt reflects who I truly am, not the shadow of what Jack tried to create through deception. Life will test you in ways you never anticipated. People you trust implicitly may betray that trust. But how you respond to these challenges ultimately defines you more than the challenges themselves. I chose to fight not just for what was legally mine, but for what I believed in most deeply. That choice made all the difference. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that forced you to redefine yourself or your path? Share your story in the comments below. Remember that your greatest setback might become the foundation for your most meaningful success. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life lessons on resilience and redemption. And if you know someone struggling with betrayal or loss, share this with them. They might find the hope they need to keep fighting. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, trust must be earned, but when you find those truly worthy of it, the risk becomes worthwhile.